Pete. Good to see you again, mate. It's been a while. Just would be nice to have a little bit of a sit down and chat about your career and maybe a bit of an insight, as a bit of background and a bit of information, and maybe tell some of the viewers about a little bit of your history and a bit of your past. Maybe start by telling us how old you were when you first picked up a racket and when your love of the game of squash first started.
Well, I was 8 years old when I first picked up a racket. Remember it very, very clearly, walking onto the squash court for the first time. My dad used to own a squash club, so he had a small little squash club with 2 courts.
Kegworth.
In a small little village called Kegworth, that's right, BJ. You probably played there.
I did a few
number of times.
Yeah.
I just walked on the court on my own, and didn't really know anything about squash, obviously, or how to pick up a racket or play. So I was only obviously tiny, and in those days it was the old wooden rackets. Heavy wooden rackets. So I just naturally picked up the racket with 2 hands and started bashing the ball up and down the wall with 2 hands. And it wasn't really until probably a year later that even my dad had seen me play squash. So by the time my dad saw me play squash and a couple of other coaches, I started with this, probably what people would say, quite an unusual technique of having 2 hands on, forehand and backhand.
That was so unique, wasn't it? Obviously other players had a double-handed backhand, but for you it was actually both sides.
That's right, yeah. I probably was the first player to, like you say, there's few players since who played double-handed backhand, but the only player to play double-handed backhand and forehand. And then Dad took me to some junior tournaments, and then actually just really fortunately I got introduced to Jonah Barrington. My local coach at the time used to play with Jonah, so he took me along to Birmingham, where Jonah was playing at the Albany club. Jonah took me on court and saw my bizarre, strange technique, and kind of took me under his wing from there. So that was then, obviously he was a big hero for everyone in the kind of late 70s, early 80s, and that was kind of...
In those early years, with that kind of unique technique of the double hands on both sides, any coaches ever pick up on that and try and maybe lean you away from that and tell you that there was a certain way to play and only one hand on the racket, or was that just... Did anybody ever go there, or did you never even entertain it?
Everyone went there, yeah. Every single coach tried to get me to stop. I mean, it was a constant. I read back now at my training reports, and every single coach said, if he doesn't change his technique in the next year, he's not going to get any better, and he's going to have to stop playing because this isn't going to survive at an older age group. And actually, Jonah was the only coach who maybe saw beyond that and thought, actually, I'm going to try and work with Peter to try and keep his double-handed technique, but also work on single-handed shots as well. So he took it in a different way.
He saw the vision.
He saw the vision in the long term, and probably because I'm stubborn, I don't know. I just kind of carried on playing the same way as what I've always done. I was being reasonably successful.
Well, you had a lot of success as a junior, didn't you? Right through the early days of the national championships. I mean, you actually won all age groups, if I remember.
That's right. Yeah, I won all age groups. Yeah, I played the very first British under-10 championships. Actually, played David Campion, who's commentated before, in the final.
You're obviously 23 years national coach of England.
Exactly, national coach later on. And then I played all the junior events, under 12s, under 14s, and I'm sure we played quite a number of times in that period. So had I suppose quite a typical junior career, and then I got to 17, 18, and all players at that age, you then got to make a decision, what I'm going to take this to the next level, or
and you felt your game was in good enough order and ready to take it to the road and chance your arm on the tour.
I mean, I had it in my head, and my dad was kind of backing me up on this. He said, well, give it a go for a year, and just see how things go. And after a year, if it doesn't work out, and you can go to university or do something different. So I gave myself a time scale of a year to see how I was going to compete. So went on the circuit. In those days, the English circuit was super strong. So I used to play all the local tournaments in the UK, all the kind of National League matches, Yorkshire League matches. I just, carried on, got a few scalps, got a few wins.
And who were the peers in that era and that generation?
So for me, I was playing against older guys, with people who might be familiar with some of the names. People like Robert Owen, I would play against.
Very familiar with that name.
Very familiar now, obviously a very, very, very well-known coach. People coming to the end of their careers, Graham Bryars, who's actually the former PSA chairman, president, used to play and train with him quite a lot. Brian Beeson, who's now playing all the Masters events over 60s. So yeah, they were Phil Kenyon. So they were a lot of the players, and then a bit later on, Del Harris as well, who's a bit older than me, but he, obviously had an unbelievable junior career. So I started competing a bit against him as well, and it's one of those things that evolve. You get a couple of wins, you get a bit more confidence, and then you think, actually, I can take this to the next level. So then I joined, it's called ISPA at the time,
wasn't it?
But now PSA, joined the professional circuit.
And did you have much knowledge of the top players in the world at that time, the kind of the overseas guys?
Yes, although it's totally different to what it is now with social media, but I was a real, kind of bookworm historian of the game, so I knew about all the, old great players. I used to watch the old VHS videotapes of Mobile Khan playing Jeff Hunt, and, got all the stories from Jonah, I was very up to date with, when I first started to playing PSA tournaments, it was Jahangir Khan and Jansher Khan, who probably people might consider the two best players ever. So they were, they were my idols when I first started, and they were the people who I really kind of looked up to. So it's a great. Professional squash was in its early stages, but
that particular area, we often reference about it, and we talk about it. A lot of us ex-players, Pete, as the golden generation, wasn't it? Those guys: Rodney Martin, Chris Dittmar, Rodney Isles, Brett Martin, Jahangir, Jansher. At what stage did you feel, and how old were you when you felt that you could actually start to genuinely mix it up with those players and actually score a couple of scalps?
Probably when I was about 20, 21, I started.
So still relatively early.
Relatively young, yeah. I think back in my day as well, it seemed like players probably peaked a little bit earlier, and then also stopped a bit early as well, because of, we just didn't have the knowledge about sports science and training. So you didn't get many players who went past 30. So players kind of peaked a little bit earlier. But yeah, the first time I played Jahangir, I probably lost in about 20 minutes. But I remember playing Rodney Martin as well for the first time, totally outclassed.
That's it, yeah.
But it's one of those things. It depends on your mentality. I saw that as a learning experience, and just kept coming back.
Did you get much exposure to play them? Because sometimes you go out and you'll get the odd opportunity, and then it may not be a little while before you get a chance to then go away, work on your game, and then test it again against those guys.
Yeah. So I was quite fortunate with Jonah's connections. He put me in touch with quite a lot of the old professionals, and I used to actually go down to Brighton quite a lot, where Chris Dittmar was based.
Yeah, the Dragons Club, right?
The Dragons Club, exactly. Yeah. And Angus Kirtland, who's involved in PSA, I was good friends with him, so I used to go and stay with Angus, who lived in Brighton, and then go and play Chris Dittmar. And he would always, he would sometimes call me up on a Saturday night and say, "Right, I want to play tomorrow morning at 7:30 in the morning. I want you to be there. If you want to play me, I want to train."
What was Chris ranked at this stage?
He was number 2 in the world at the time.
What an opportunity that is! Yeah.
So I'm there waiting with bated breath. Of course, I'll be there at 7:30 in the morning. So I'd go on call with him for and he'd play me for kind of an hour and a half. Run me ragged, and then he would do his training after that. But so he just saw it as a bit of a bit of a warm up. But for me,
what an opportunity,
no better experience to get on court. So I was really up for travelling around the country, just trying to play as many good players as I could. So I was really keen just to get even if I was going to lose, just get exposed.
Just to get on court with that calibre of player.
Exactly. Yeah.
That must have been good for your confidence at that age to know that you've got somebody of Chris Dittmar's ilk willing to take you on a regular basis and give you that chance to get on court with him.
No, exactly. Yeah. I think all the top players, they don't mind training with people, playing with people who are going to try 100%, even if you can't get to their level. And actually, years and years later, kind of reversed happened. And when I was in training in Nottingham, Nick Matthew, who was 3 times a world champion, probably best player, one of the best players Britain's ever had, he used to come up from Sheffield and play me when he was like 17, 18. And I was probably close to the peak of my career. He used to come over. First time I played him, and hopefully won't be too bad about reminding me of this. I beat him 27-11, didn't get 1 point. But the next week came back again, got a couple more points. Next week came back again.
Progression.
And we had a period of about 6 months a year where it would come every week and we'll play. And it was very similar to me playing Chris Dittmar, years and years ago. Yeah. So I used to do the same thing. I used to play Nick Matthew and then train afterwards and had my own programme. But yeah, it's just I think it's really nice when you can see someone young and hungry and super keen and enthusiastic. Yeah, I think it just means that the top players even are keen to get on court with you.
Obviously, your career high was world number 2. Career was tragically, I won't say cut short, it was interrupted with the chronic fatigue. But what age do you feel you were when you were at the peak of your powers and really, you obviously beat Jahangir, you beat Jancha, I assume, over the years at some stage, but where do you feel you kind of really hit your best?
Yeah, so it probably, I mean, it was, positives and negatives around this. Probably just was before I got ill, actually. So 22 years old, I was then number 2 in the world, starting to push Jancha Khan, who at the time, I think he'd won, so this is kind of early 90s, he'd won 7 or 8 world championships, still an unbelievable player, obviously. Like we said before, probably the best player ever, or very close with Jancha as one of the best players ever. But I was getting closer to him, so we had quite a few matches where it was 3-1, then it was 3-2. So I was only 22, he was probably 30, so getting towards the end of his career, I'm starting, hopefully still got a good few more years left in me. But then I picked up glandular fever, and then quickly after that I got chronic fatigue syndrome. So when I think I was 23 actually, and I played my last British Open final. I managed to get to the final, played Jancha, and before that I'd been pushing him. It was 3-2 really close matches. This particular match, I knew I wasn't 100%. Lost 3-love very, very quickly. And it was then after that I was I was out of the game then for 2 years actually. Didn't pick up a racket for 2 years. It was just as I was coming to my peak, and also Jancha probably then starting to fall down a bit, ripe in a way for me to take on the next position and get to number 1. But that's what happens in life.
C'est la vie.
That's life.
Pete, always a pleasure to catch up. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks,
Look after
BJ.
yourself, mate. Take care, pal.